The Free Thinker Show. Ignite your mind, challenge the norm.
All right, so get ready, because today we're going deep on a story that honestly sounds like it could be a movie. We're talking Bitcoin, a hacker who pulled off a $3 billion heist, and like all the crazy things that led to his downfall. And to guide us through this wild ride, we've got not one but two documentaries lined up, both about Jimmy Zhong, the hacker at the center of it all. So by the end of this deep dive, you'll know exactly how he did it, who this guy really is, and the totally unexpected thing that brought him down.
You know, what I find so fascinating about this whole case is it's not just about the tech, right? It really digs into the human side of this whole Bitcoin world.
Yeah, totally. It makes you wonder, like, what would push someone to do something like this? But speaking of, push and drive, let's start with Jimmy's early life. The docs paint a pretty interesting picture of his younger years. He had to deal with a lot early on, being an immigrant, not really fitting in at school, and then his parents split up.
It sounds like he found his place, though, in the world of computers and coding.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where his whole Bitcoin fascination starts. He becomes like one of the first people to really get into it, even mining Bitcoin way back in 2009. It's crazy to think about now, right? Back then, Bitcoin was this like weird fringe thing. Most people had no idea it'd be worth millions someday.
It's amazing how those early interests can shape like your whole life. And to really get Jimmy's story, we kind of need to understand what was going on in the Bitcoin world back then. This is where the Silk Road comes in.
Oh, yeah, the Silk Road, infamous. For those who might not know, can you give us a little background on what that was all about?
Sure. So the Silk Road was this online marketplace, but it was operating on what they called the dark web. Think of it like a hidden part of the internet where people could buy and sell illegal stuff totally anonymously. It became this huge hub of activity. And Bitcoin was the currency everyone used there because it was, well, at least they thought it was anonymous.
Okay, so we've got Jimmy, this young guy obsessed with computers and Bitcoin. And then we've got the Silk Road, this underground marketplace where basically anything goes. So how did these two worlds collide?
So while Jimmy's using the Silk Road, he stumbles on this flaw in the system, a glitch. And it basically lets him create free Bitcoin. They call it the infinite money glitch. It let him withdraw double the Bitcoin he put in.
Wait, so like he puts in one Bitcoin and gets two back? How is that even possible?
Well, back then, Bitcoin transactions weren't nearly as secure as they are now. There were these vulnerabilities in how transactions were processed. Imagine you're making a deposit at a bank, but the bank accidentally records two deposits instead of one. You essentially double your money.
So Jimmy finds this loophole and realizes he can exploit it.
Exactly, and he totally did. He took off with millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin from the Silk Road and its users. It's kind of ironic, right? A hacker stealing from criminals.
Yeah, it's like a twisted Robin Hood story, but maybe not so altruistic, huh? So what does Jimmy do with all this newfound wealth?
He starts living the high life, of course. Lavish parties, fancy cars, taking his friends on extravagant trips.
The documentaries mention this one trip to the Rose Bowl where he took a bunch of friends and treated everyone to a $10,000 shopping spree. It's pretty clear he was using his wealth to, like, make friends and get people to accept him. It kind of makes you think about, what he might have been missing earlier in life.
That's a good point. It's like he was trying to buy that social acceptance he always wanted, maybe to make up for those tough times he had growing up.
Yeah, and that need for validation seems to come up in his online persona, too. He created this alter ego called Loaded on the Bitcoin Talk forum. Can you tell us more about this Loaded character and what Jimmy was hoping to achieve with him?
So Loaded basically became Jimmy's way to show off all his dirty money. He'd brag about how much Bitcoin he had and pretend to be this super successful trader. He even jokingly suggested that Loaded might actually be the real Dread Pirate Roberts, the mastermind behind the Silk Road.
Huh? That's pretty bold. So it sounds like he was living this double life, both online and offline, creating this big facade of wealth and success. But, like with anything built on lies, it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that started his downfall was this real estate investment he made seemed smart at the time.
Okay, so how does a real estate investment lead to the unraveling of a Bitcoin heist?
Well, to pay for it, Jimmy had to use the Bitcoin he stole. And when he did that, he made a big mistake, a traceable transaction. Remember, the blockchain, that's the tech behind Bitcoin, it keeps track of every single transaction forever.
So even though people thought Bitcoin was anonymous back then, there was still a way to track the money.
Yep. Exactly. And that one little slip-up caught the eye of the IRS, specifically an investigator named Trevor McAleenan, who specialized in cryptocurrency crimes.
Oh, so the feds were on the case now.
And it gets even crazier. Remember that $400,000 robbery Jimmy reported to the police?
The one that seemed kind of random.
That's the thing. That report accidentally put him right on the IRS's radar. They started looking into his finances, and things unraveled pretty quickly. The police even went to Jimmy's house, but they pretended it was about the robbery.
So he had no idea they were actually after his Bitcoin fortune.
No clue. In fact, he showed off all his wealth to the investigators. He even logged into his Bitcoin wallet right in front of them.
Oh, wow. Talk about oblivious. This is where we'll pause for now, but when we come back, we'll dive into the raid on Jimmy's home, the crazy things the investigators found, and what ultimately happened to all that stolen Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Okay, so last time we left off with Jimmy totally unaware of that IRS investigation going on. He thought they were there about the robbery, but they were playing a whole different game.
Yeah, they were definitely playing it cool, using that robbery report to get close to him. And Jimmy, well, he just walked right into their trap.
It's crazy how he just let them in and showed off all that money he got illegally. And the whole thing was caught on those body cameras the investigators were wearing. You could see Jimmy giving them a tour, bragging about how he spends his money, showing off his security system. It's wild.
It's like a glimpse into what was going on in his head, trying to keep up that image. It's like he actually thought he was untouchable. But back to the investigation. So after they got enough evidence, the agents had to, show their cards.
Yeah, I can only imagine the look on Jimmy's face. So how did they go from being all friendly about the robbery to, like, serious federal agents?
They had this whole plan, really carefully thought out. They got Jimmy to go out on his balcony and started talking to him about, I don't know, anything to keep him away from his laptop.
Smart. So while Jimmy was busy out there, the agents were making their move inside, huh? What'd they do?
One of the agents used this thing called a jiggler on Jimmy's computer. It's basically this little tool that stops a computer from locking. It was important because they had to get into his laptop without him knowing so they could get the evidence.
And then as soon as they had the laptop, boom, the raid started.
Exactly. You got to picture it, this quiet neighborhood. Suddenly there are police cars and federal agents everywhere. One of Jimmy's neighbors said it was like a scene straight out of a movie.
Yeah, that's a serious twist. From casual conversation on the balcony to a full-on raid in, like, minutes. They weren't messing around.
Nope. They were there for that Bitcoin, millions of dollars of it. And they were super thorough when they searched his place. They found Bitcoin hidden all over, stacks of cash, hard drives, you name it.
It sounds like a heist movie, but this time it's the feds doing the heisting. Where'd they find everything?
Cash and hard drives were tucked away in all these weird places. But get this, the most surprising thing they found was this little computer hidden inside a popcorn tin.
What? A popcorn tin?
Yeah, right in a bathroom closet. Kind of funny, right? This totally normal thing hiding millions of dollars.
It's hard to believe a popcorn tin helped crack a multi-million-dollar Bitcoin heist. Did they find anything else?
Oh, yeah. They also found a safe buried in concrete under the basement floor. Talk about going all out to hide your dirty money.
What was in the safe? More Bitcoin.
Oh, more than that. They found wallets connected to the Silk Road heist, even some of those physical Bitcoins from way back in the early days. It was like a jackpot. Tons of evidence linking Jimmy straight to the crime.
So that one traceable transaction and Jimmy's decision to report the robbery led them to the whole operation. From the hack itself to all the ways he tried to hide the Bitcoin.
Yeah, classic case of being too confident and it being your downfall. But as they kept digging, they found out something else about Jimmy, something pretty unexpected.
What could be more surprising than finding a safe buried in concrete?
They found out that Jimmy wasn't just some random hacker who got lucky with a glitch. He was a Bitcoin OG, an original gangster.
Hold on, what's a Bitcoin OG?
It means he was one of the first developers, the guys who actually wrote the code for Bitcoin.
You're kidding. So he helped create the very system he ended up exploiting. That's insane.
Yeah, it adds a whole other level to this story. Here's this guy, deeply involved in Bitcoin from the beginning, and he uses his knowledge to, make himself rich.
You gotta wonder if knowing the system so well made it easier to pull off the heist. Did he use some weakness he knew about from when he was a developer?
It's definitely possible, but we can only guess. Now, Jimmy says he didn't mean to steal from the Silk Road. He claims he found that withdrawal glitch by accident.
Accidentally? Come on, he did it for months, took millions of dollars in Bitcoin.
Oh.
Doesn't sound too accidental to me.
Right, and the investigators found stuff that suggests he knew exactly what he was doing. They found records that show he was keeping tabs on the Silk Road's wallets and taking as much as he could on purpose.
So he's trying to play the innocent card, but the evidence tells a different story. And get this, it gets even wilder. Jimmy also says that after the hack, he talked to Dread Pirate Roberts himself.
No way, the guy running the whole Silk Road, what'd they talk about?
Jimmy says Dread Pirate Roberts made him a deal. He could keep the Bitcoin he stole and even get a bonus, 5,000 more Bitcoin, if he explained how he did the hack.
Wait a minute, the guy in charge of this huge criminal operation just gives millions to the guy who stole from him and even offers him more. That's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, especially considering Dread Pirate Roberts was supposed to be, like, ruthless and secretive.
There's nothing to prove Jimmy's story, so who knows what to believe. But some people say Dread Pirate Roberts wasn't too savvy about the tech side of Bitcoin. Maybe he thought Jimmy's knowledge was valuable, even after the theft.
It's still a wild story, even if it's not all true. This whole thing just keeps getting more and more interesting.
It sure does. When we come back, we'll talk about what happened after the raid, the trial, and what happened to Jimmy and all that Bitcoin.
So, welcome back to the deep dive. It's hard to believe how much we've already uncovered in this crazy Bitcoin story. We've got Jimmy Zhong, this guy who went from a tough childhood to being like a Bitcoin pioneer, and he ends up pulling off one of the biggest heists in crypto history.
Yeah, and don't forget about all the crazy ways he tried to hide the money. I mean, safes, cash stashed everywhere, a computer in a popcorn tin. Seriously.
It's like a movie. So what happens after the raid? What about Jimmy?
Well, obviously they arrested him. But as the case went on, it's interesting because even with his fancy lifestyle and that loaded persona online, Jimmy seemed different during all the legal stuff.
What do you mean?
He admitted he was guilty of wire fraud, and at his sentencing, none of his family or friends were there. But he did get a bunch of letters from people supporting him, and they painted this picture of him as a lonely guy who just wanted to connect with people.
That's kind of sad. You know, he has all this money from doing illegal stuff, lives his crazy life, but it sounds like he was still looking for something more, something real.
Yeah, one of the letters even mentioned how much he loved his dog, Chad, an older dog. It kind of humanizes the whole thing.
It makes you wonder why he did it all. Was it all about getting rich, or was there something else going on?
It's hard to say for sure, but those letters make it seem like wanting acceptance and connection played a big part.
So what happened at the trial? How long did he go to prison for?
He got a pretty light sentence, just 1 year and a day.
Seriously? That doesn't seem like much for stealing so much.
His lawyer argued that back then, the laws around Bitcoin were kind of vague. It was like the Wild West of crypto. Nobody really knew the rules.
So he got lucky because it happened in the early days of Bitcoin.
I think that definitely helped him. His lawyer also brought up the abuse Jimmy went through as a kid. They said that might have influenced his actions later on.
Man, this story just keeps getting more and more complicated. But what about the stolen Bitcoin? Didn't the victims want it back?
That's where it gets even weirder. Because the Silk Road was for illegal stuff, nobody came forward to claim their Bitcoin.
I guess they couldn't go to the police without getting trouble themselves, right?
Exactly. So the U.S. government took all the Bitcoin and sold it.
Wait, so the government made money off Jimmy's crime?
Yeah, kind of ironic, right? They made billions selling that Bitcoin.
Wow. So Jimmy goes to prison for a year, and the government that put him there ends up making a fortune from it.
It's a strange ending, that's for sure. It shows how messy things are with crime, technology, and the legal system when it comes to crypto.
So Jimmy did his time. The government got rich. End of story.
Not really. Jimmy's story makes you think about the future of crypto and cybercrime.
Like what?
For example, could someone pull off something like this today? With all the blockchain tech and tracking, it seems way harder to hide now.
That's true. Back then, people thought Bitcoin was anonymous digital cash. But now everyone's watching, and there are tools to track transactions.
Exactly. But even though technology makes it harder to hide illegal stuff, there are always new ways to exploit the system. It's like a constant battle between the hackers and the people trying to keep things secure.
So what's the lesson here for our listeners? What can we learn from Bitcoin, Jimmy?
I think it reminds us that crypto is still new and changing all the time. It's powerful technology with tons of potential, but it also comes with risks.
Like scams, hacks, or just making bad investments.
Exactly. And as we saw with Jimmy, wanting to get rich quick can lead even smart people down a bad path. It shows how important it is to educate ourselves, be careful, and do our research in this exciting but sometimes confusing world of crypto.
Yeah, it's a warning for sure, but it's also a cool look into the early days of Bitcoin and all the crazy things that happened.
It makes you wonder what other stories are out there hidden in the blockchain, what other secrets are waiting to be discovered.
That's a good point. Something for everyone to think about as they explore the world of crypto. We just scratched the surface here. Who knows what's next for this revolutionary technology?
Yeah, the future is full of possibilities, good and bad. As we go forward, we need to learn from the past, understand the present, and approach the future of crypto with excitement, but also with carefulness.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. But the conversation doesn't stop here. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking questions. Until next time, stay curious.